It's not easy butchering people. It's hard work. You know, there's a lot more like me. We're talking to serial killers. Serial killers! New terminology. Are criminals born, or are they formed? How do we get ahead of crazy if we don't know how crazy thinks? It's easier to ask for forgiveness than for permission. Welcome to the Hollow9ine Mindhunter Podcast. All right, this is case file number 002 for the Hollow9ine Network's Behavioral Sciences Investigative Division, tasked with coverage of Netflix's original series Mindhunter, Episode 2. This is Dave the Klone reporting in as director again, and joining me around the table for our continued investigation are, all the way from Purgatory, we're pulling you out of your constant, ongoing, growing number of minutes over there, Jennifer Earp, saying hello again.
I'm going to take offense to that, Dave, because we've kept it under 10 minutes pretty much every time.
I'm not complaining about the time. I'm all about more minutes for Hollow9ine listeners to enjoy out there. I'm just saying, you know, Purgatory is that place everyone says they want to avoid, and we just keep sending you back for 10 minutes at a time.
I want to go back. I want to go back every time, all the time.
And all the Earpers out there, I hope some of you all are hanging out with us over here at the Mindhunter Zone.
I hope so, too.
From Saloon 7 Studios and half of the Grit and Grace TV program over there, let's say hi again to investigator CJ Ripka.
Hello, everybody. How's it going? And thank you for having me on again.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think once we kind of start going down the road on this, it feels like one of those group traumas we all have to go through together forever. And we will never be the same after we learn about the inner workings of the dark human brain. Thank you for being a part of our continuing efforts here. And rounding out the form and quorum tonight from the world of the Dead novels and also a resident big bad of Tangent City, Dr. Paulson himself, Mr. T.W. Brown. How are you tonight, sir?
Doing good. Hey, Dave.
Well, we are back again to continue going on the journey with Special Agent Holden Ford and his new partner, Bill Tench, as we educate ourselves and the law enforcement around the country about the growing phenomenon that is serialized killing. But I think this is the episode that really defines what Mindhunter is as a show. Holy shit, Ed Kemper. Oh, my God, Ed Kemper.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I think there's nowhere else to begin, right? I mean, that's it. That is it. This is where the show really... Also, I guess we could talk about how the opening of this episode was the first of... changing tone and letting us know that they're going to be breaking badding us a little bit on this series here. Good work, Mr. Fincher. What'd you guys...
That's the thing is once this kicks in with episode 2 and these little teasers, I'm waiting for the whole episode for it to matter.
Yeah, for it to come back.
I mean,
right?
that was the thing is it had me. And I think that this is one of those programs that is designed for binge watchers. Because if you had to wait a week, every week you get that new one and you'd be like, what happened last week? Whereas when you binge watch it, you want to hurry up and get to that part because you're like, all right, I want to see what's going to happen next after you get through episode 1 or episode 2, I should say. And I mean, I hate to spoil it for anybody that's not seen it yet, but you're sitting there waiting for that to matter, and it doesn't really. Not to the story of what's going on.
We should put out that disclaimer, which I don't know that we necessarily did last episode. And if we, if we hurt your feelings, I'm sorry. But disclaimer, spoiler alert. That's how we're going to be talking about the show. I mean, you don't do an investigation without doing an investigation. So if you are not current, at least up until episode 2, please stop here. Pause. Don't stop. Pause here. Go watch the show, then come back and resume. We have watched the whole season, so we are going to be kind of going a little bit in the direction of putting the pieces in perspective of the whole picture. So I think it's a richer and fuller way to cover the show, and fuck it, it's more fun for us to be able to just talk about it the way we want to talk about it. So that's what you're here for. Exactly. It's why you tune in. Jenny, what was your kind of reaction to this new open, the cold open of episode 2?
This was it reminded me of the like back in the 80s when the whole like psycho mailman kind of thing.
Postal, yes.
Like, yes, right? Because you're in that work environment, and I'm like I keep seeing the guy looking for the tape, and I'm like, okay, looking for the tape. It's the guy. That's going to be the guy. And then the guy's like, no, you need to bring the roll of tape. And I'm like, what? This is the weirdest conversation ever. Because the other guy's like, I just need to roll the tape. Just give me the roll of tape. Like, and then it just ends. And you're like, what is happening? It's electrical tape. Why is this such a big deal? I mean, it had me hooked. It had me hooked because I was like, this is important. This is important reason, and I don't know why, but I want to know why.
CJ, what did you think?
I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Mainly because from the beginning, as soon as they started showing it, I was like, oh, I know what's coming here. I know what's going to happen. And I even from that very first episode, I kind of had the theory of who it even could be. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of different guys that I thought, okay, I think I know where the storyline's going. And I thought it was going to play out in that series or in that episode, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because I just kind of felt that's the way, because that's the way most opens are. It's like you get the flash, and then you kind of get the story throughout the episode. And I should have known from the first one it wasn't going to be like that.
Right.
But I hadn't thought about that yet. So I was disappointed that I didn't find out more, or I wasn't confirmed as to who I thought that was. But then I kind of forgot about it as we got into the episode because it got so big so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of the things I definitely think is hard to miss about this show is they pack a lot into each episode. You know, there are some episodes that of shows that are in the 50 to an hour minute, 50 to 60 minute long count, and it feels like it goes by in 10 minutes. And then this show, usually this is a complaint about shows, but I feel like each hour has the same amount that a 2-hour movie would have in it. You know, you're kind of like, holy shit. That's why I even felt some of episode 2 bleed back into episode 1 in our last podcast about it, where I was like, well, didn't this guy stand up and say, what the fuck, you guys? Tell me what this means. And then you guys are like, no, dude, that's and I'm like, well, shit, spoiler alert. Y'all should be ready for this. But apparently, my parents, they watched the show after I told them about it, and they knew right away who that guy was. Like, this is an actual guy from history, like an actual serial killer. Yeah. But not knowing that, and not knowing that it was based on a real person, I thought that this was going to be the show's first completely fictional created serial killer of their own, and we were going to watch this is the moment. Like, the first one we're seeing this is the inciting incident that set them on the path of, okay, that was it. It was the one day too many of someone asking me for a new roll of tape without bringing back the cardboard. So guess what? I am going to start literally fucking murdering people, like across the country. That's it. I'm beginning a reign of terror that no one will know is me. But I didn't know which of the two guys that was going to be. Was it the guy who wanted the cardboard thing to come back because that's how it's done? Or was the other guy going, are you fucking kidding me? Just give me new tape. Just give me some new tape, God damn it. And I was like, either one could easily be the person who goes off on a fucking killing spree. You know what I mean? Like, either one of those people are being shown in a situation that I'm like, so here we go. This is it. This was the beginning of American debt slavery, finally pushing people to the edge. This is the conspiracy theorists' beginning point. Point A. This is going to lead us to 9/11 right here.
So now, right when you were talking, Dave, I had just had an amazing epiphany.
Yeah, I saw it. I saw it happen, and I was like, I better end this so she could say her thing.
No. In the cold open, and I don't know why I didn't catch on this like the first time we watched it, but when I watched it the other day, because I always watch things on closed captioning once, watch it on closed captioning and then without it, right?
Nice.
And this time I was watching it with it on, And right when the guy that was asking for the tape turns around and walks away, he goes, "Whatever, Dennis."
Oh, he
totally
said his
throwaway
name.
line.
Whatever, Dennis.
He said his name. I didn't even just caught it.
I bet CJ knows who it is.
Yeah.
His name.
CJ's like, I've done the research, guys.
Yeah.
And so do your parents because they lived during that time. But,
Right.
I caught it because honestly, this guy was a study in my psychology class in college. So
oh, wow.
That's how I caught onto it. Right.
Nice.
So now, do you think that played into your instant love of the show? Because you're one of the people that when I posted the notice on Facebook, like, "Hey, we're going to seriously get started with the podcast," you're like, "What the hell?" You know, like your Facebook response of like, "I never even heard of this, and now I've already watched the whole season twice," and I'm like, "Okay, look at that." That was I dropped the bait in the water, and the sharks are here. Like, oh my god.
Yeah, that was definitely one of those reasons why having studied some of this stuff in college kind of boom, there it is. So yeah, and it's exciting, and I can't wait to jump into this full episode because just this opening sequence, it shows so much. There's so much being shown.
Yeah,
the nonverbal information you can get from this 30 seconds is absolutely, it tells an entire story in 30 seconds. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I like the fact that I identified with what it was, with not knowing what it really is, and I'm intrigued because I know CJ knows so much about the real people that this is about. Like, I almost want to say maybe I'll go read the damn book, but I kind of don't want to look him up because, like, not only was this scene super cool, but they get progressively cooler and creepier. You know what I mean? And especially in the context of what Holden learns this episode. You know, now this episode kind of carries some of the monotony of the last episode. You know, I will admit that there is a certain level of monotony that you have to be okay with. David Fincher's style has that, like, you know, when you think of Zodiac, that movie's super long. I've gotten bored watching it at times, you know, and I think this is a show that could sort of suffer from that every once in a while, but I think if you're fascinated by what they're talking about, that doesn't happen so much. But that is the one complaint I've heard from people who haven't been able to get into it. They're like, dude, man, the episodes were so long and I felt like nothing was happening. And I'm like, are you not a book reader? If you're not a book reader, maybe this isn't kind of like the show for you. Because to me, I'm all about dialogue. I live for characters with rich dialogue. And so for me, this show is I feel like this show should be studied for how to write characters with really distinct voices.
This is one of those programs where you want to have everything done before you sit down to watch it, because you don't want to get up and leave the room to go refill something to drink or grab somebody, because you will miss something important.
Oh, you mean something you could do during the fucking title sequence that people skip over? Gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's what you do with the pause button, man. But it's one of these shows that when you're watching it, and this is the part that I don't understand when people start talking about a level of boredom. And that's because a show like this, you're going to find something in just about every sequence that is important or that leads you down a path or misdirects you even. But this is one of those shows that I didn't find a moment of it tedious or boring at all, because I was so pulled in to the interactions, seeing that, and having lived during that time, seeing that era of time portrayed, and watching it and going, God, we really were like this. This is really how we were. I mean, this was our society. It's not this freewheeling sort of, laid back thing now. It was a mind your own business world back then, and again, ultra conservative to what we're used to now. And so I didn't find any of it, especially the dialogue sequences, which I felt gave me more depth of knowledge about how these people came to conclusions they came to or acted the way they acted, And this is also, to me, an episode that really, and as long as I'm not getting it wrong, starts to work on the humanization of the guys that are in lockup.
Yeah.
Because when they start doing these interviews, it's easy to picture these guys as what you see on a photograph when they say, you know, this killer, this killer, this killer, and they don't really tell you. You actually get to see them interact and how they are, and there's a humanization aspect to it.
You definitely see how the empathy that they talked about in episode 1 is actually utilized in episode 2, and it's pretty intriguing there too.
Yeah, you know, one thing we didn't talk about in episode 1 was the college class that Holden sits in on, where the professor's talking about, you know, there's 5 types of killer: the born killer, the environmentally made killer, the habitual killer. You know, and this, I think we get a little bit of that continuation with Anna Torv's character, right? Because that's sort of what she backs up a lot of what Holden's sort of take on what they're doing is. And Tench is the one, he starts out more like a Scully, and by the end of this episode, for sure, he's a full-on Mulder just like everybody else. You know, he actually is the one who winds up saving the day, because this is the episode where we learn as an audience that heroes in shows have to take risks. If you don't take a risk, there's no show. There's nothing that happens. There's no episode.
Yeah.
The monotony of this episode is, I think, what we're supposed to feel that Holden feels about his life on the road. You know, basically, their role as partners is they go and they teach these classes to law enforcement, local law enforcement all around the country, teaching them the FBI tactics, because they're the ones that are on the front lines, right? They're the ones that are going to run into, eventually, the guy that we saw in the cold open. So they're the ones that need to learn this, and we see it doesn't necessarily go that smoothly. It's not something that's taken to right away. It's like the skepticism that we saw in Holden's classes in the first episode to taken up a notch to the next level.
Yeah. Yeah, because you get that one. I think it was in Santa Cruz. Was it when they were teaching that class that the older guy that had dealt with Manson or knew people that were dealing with the Manson case, and he was just mean and gruff and was like, "Whatever, this doesn't help me at all. Here, I got this case. Can you help me with this case?" And they're like, "No, we can't. We don't know anything more than you do."
Yeah, he was like one of those old school skeptics who's like, "All right, use your shit and tell me right now what the hell. You know, use your special abilities, FBI man. Tell me what this means." But he was also this show's version of the cigarette smoking man from X-Files, I think, too.
Totally.
I was just like, he's like, "All right, you sons of bitches, I've been here since the beginning." And I mean, the thing is, for as much as, like, you know, the adjectives that we want to use right away, like he's gruff, he's mean, he's sort of, skepticism is probably even too light a word.
Seasoned,
grizzled, right? Broken. Maybe he's even a little broken, right? Because he definitely has some baggage he's carrying around from having been around the Mansons. I mean, we've seen Manson get mentioned a lot in the show, right? Manson is everybody's benchmark for the first level of serial killer, I guess, too, before we realize there's
you can't talk about murder almost without mentioning him. I think I don't think much serial killer as murder. And I think this also demonstrates how they did not have a definition for what a serial killer was, because anybody who killed on any kind of scale more than just the one crime of passion was, you know, murderer, period. And the whole Manson thing made it so that it was their tie-in. It was their go-to, because such a violent, horrific thing was tied to it. So they did that whole situation with serial killers.
If you look at what Manson was, though, it's not just that. It's also, you add in the control aspect. You also add in the evil aspect of it. There's so many different things. When we think Manson, right away we think evil, controlling, mind control, all these things that he's synonymous with. And you don't get that with like the Berkowitzes and stuff like that. You get the control aspect, but you don't know as much. The Manson thing was all over the news. I mean, that was the most publicized mass killings that ever happened. So at that time, so when someone says Charles Manson, you got kids today at 10, 11 years old who can understand that connection. Whereas if you were to say Son of Sam, that you got teenagers nowadays that wouldn't understand what the son of
They think you were talking about a Western.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, there's a lot of themes that come to play in this episode as well. Not only does Holden kind of do that overachiever way of being able to kind of work their way into being even allowed to do these interviews. You know, his first interview, he gets because he's pursuing an interview with Manson, right? He's in a class and he's talking to another detective in the back who's just like, oh yeah, forget about Manson, you'll never get to talk to him, but you know who you should talk to, this guy Ed Kemper. The guy will never shut the fuck up. You'll start talking to him, you'll have fucking material for a book by the end of this thing, you know. And I love characters like that because we only see that guy once in the whole season, you know, that the one guy who's got that very distinctive, I'm like a featured extra who's probably been in like a whole bunch of other shit that you've seen, and maybe I'll even be in more shit now that I'm in this. I mean, I did that Illuminati blood oath thing last week, so I'm supposed to be on the upswing.
I could have swore I saw him in Sopranos at one point.
Yeah, right.
Or I'll end up on the Big Brother Celebrity Edition.
Yeah, man. But he steers them towards who becomes our first case study that, I guess, you know, I mean, for all of us, how do you not fall in love with the charisma of this character? You know what I mean? And it's a horrifying concept, but right away we talk about, you go to YouTube and they put up side-by-side comparison of the actual killer and the actor in this show portraying him, and you're just like, award this man. Get every
Seriously.
board that needs to, just watch this YouTube video and award this man. Who, let me see, this is the whole reason I opened IMDb. Who played Ed Kemper? A guy by the name of Cameron Britton, who, let's check his IMDb. He's got a couple of things filming. I'm not surprised that he's got a whole bunch of stuff. He was in an episode of SWAT, the 2017 SWAT TV series. So he's like a newcomer. We have a lot of TV and a lot of shorts, a lot of stuff, I guess, that none of us would even recognize, so I'm not going to bother saying it. But Cameron Britton.
3.
There you go.
Yeah.
Frightened inmate number 2.
I wonder if he did a lot of like improv stuff, because the way the mannerisms and stuff that he was able to get of Ed Kemper's was like, and for being such a young actor, it was like very in tune. Like he either caught it really fast or he just watched a bunch of video before they filmed this.
Yeah.
Mentioned the fact that the similarities in the way he looks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's uncanny. I mean, his face, his height, his weight, everything. It almost nails Ed Kemper to a T.
Yeah.
And it's like there's a certain almost scary element of Gentle Giant going on there, because, you know, until certain moments occur, you kind of are... And I think we see this in the way that Holden responds to him when he first meets him. The way that Jonathan Groff playing Holden Ford here, how official we sound all of a sudden. You know, IMDb, today you're coming through for me. He's sort of like, you could tell he's got like an affinity for him. Like his fascination with him immediately puts him into, all right, like your first time out, you've crossed the line, dude. You've gone too far in getting too close to this guy. You're not being scientific enough with this. This is why I kind of like Bill Tench's voice of reason and not liking this whole idea, because, you know, we as the audience are just as fascinated with this dude when he first comes on the screen.
Now, is that's in his second interview with him, where he says, "Hey, you're going too far. You know, you shouldn't do it that way."
Right.
Right.
You know, even in that first step, that first initial contact, though, between the two, you already kind of get that feeling of, well, he says it. He goes, "I have no idea what I'm doing here, but we're just going to keep talking until we figure this out." Is pretty much what he says, and in that whole, and Ed's response to that is, "Well, I don't want to talk about the stuff, you know, I don't want to make small talk. I just want to talk about what I did, because that's what I'm happy talking about." So he kind of said, "Here I am. Let's do this."
And there was a lot of, I mean, this sort of mirrors almost like a first date with the awkwardness and the fumbling and everything else like that, you know. And,
Totally.
And Ford's a little. You can almost see that there's a bit of I don't want to say starstruck, but you know, he is a little bit in awe of what he's what he's sitting there across the table from, and that's why I said they sort of work on the humanization aspect, I think, a lot in this episode to show that, these guys, even though they are whack job crazy and capable of doing awful things, there's still a side of them that has, that is the kid you sat next to in class that just took the wrong turn. They have a humanness to them, and it's something that's easy to forget.
Oh well, this parallel thing going on behind the scenes. He's two different people in one.
Yeah.
Just like everybody, though, and that's what draws us into this characters. We're all that way. We have two sides to us.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily a serial murderer side, but everybody has it, and it draws us to that character. And the nuances that this actor is able to bring to this character is absolutely genius.
It's funny.
His charisma is. Sorry, Dave.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just saying his charisma of being friends with the guards and
yes.
just being able to be like, Hey John, yeah, can you give me some egg salad? Like they have really good egg salad here. Do you want some? And just like, what's happening right now? Like we're supposed to think this guy is a crazy like psychotic guy, and he's just like, oh yeah, I'm friends with the guards. They like me. I don't keep to myself, and I like egg salad. Like whatever. Like what?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's interesting that TW brought up that it's almost as awkward as a first date because it becomes like hey, let's have something to eat, and it's like, and it's not even it's like, hey John, have you seen Marty today? Can you think you could find him for me? And it's like. Dude, you fucking murdered people and fucked their corpses? Like, I know, I'm like baffled right now. I am baffled.
That's the aspect that a lot of people miss is if you've never done any kind of time at all, any kind of lockup time at all, is you don't know what's going on inside there, and you don't realize that becomes a society, and that is your neighborhood. And granted, there's taking the guards out of it and everything else like that, and not going on who's good, who's bad. But you hang out with these guys, and then all of a sudden realize that the guy you're sitting there, getting a guitar lesson from, is one of the Manson family members.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I did time. That's a real life story for me. I learned guitar from Bobby Beausoleil, who was one of the Manson family.
Holy shit, dude! Wow.
I throw that out there. But when you sit down with Bobby at lunch, you just can't see any of that because first of all, it's the 2000s, and this is not the Bobby Beausoleil from the 60s. This is now 40 years down the line, Bobby Beausoleil, and you're having lunch with him, and he's just an old dude. Wow. And it's the same thing with these guys. What they showed in this episode is that on the inside, those guys, you're seeing them as a media figure. When you read about a serial killer, you're seeing them as a media figure. You're not seeing him as a guy that, walks the yard, hits the weight pile, watches TV, has a specific magazine he likes to read, or as a bookworm. You're seeing him as just what the image is given on TV of the terrible things he's done in the murders. And this episode really shows the other side. And I think that's important.
Wow. Yep. Wow, dude. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, man. That's fucking cool. I mean, that you have that ability to bridge some of this for us because that to be able to talk about how realistic this is from experience like that. Thank you for being cool with sharing that with us. That's like mind blowing to me because I feel like now we're going to be discussing what I feel like they're showing us on the show, and you'll be like, yeah, that's exactly what they're doing, or no, they got that wrong. And it was kind of like the way you're describing that, like Holden is not seeing the danger. He wanted to bring his gun and his badge in, and Intench is like, dude, are you out of your fucking mind? The guy is like going to tower over you. What happens if he takes that away and shoot, like he's killed people before. He's going to shoot you. And I think that there's an interesting dichotomy at work there, and that it takes a while for Tench to even open up to the idea of seeing the human side, because that's the whole point of what they're trying to do. They can't do this project of trying to figure out how to spot these minds before there are 15 victims down the line. And I think this is also, I love that they use the chief, like their superior, completely not seeing any value in this at all when he finds out about it. You know, his first reaction is to kind of freak out about, like, how dare you, like, what, are you guys out of your fucking minds doing this? Like, this is crazy.
Well, the chief literally tells him that this is not a science. This is not real. This is the backroom boys. He's basically saying that this is the homosexual psychology, is what he's trying to tell him. Only homosexuals get into the psychology of why people do whatever they do. And they're right there on the front line saying, no, this is the reason we need to understand so we can, figure out how to catch these people rather than letting them go on these 8-year killing sprees or these 3-year killing sprees or whatever it is that they're doing.
Also limiting your view by having that kind of a stigma that you use. Like, we don't need to discuss, we don't need to explore anymore. It's either this or it's this. It's nothing else. And they're like, no, we already discussed that it's strangers killing strangers. So now we have to feel like if you see the mailman looking at you and licking his lips like you're a steak, he's probably cutting people up on his free time. This is the shit we need to be able to figure out. And I think another aspect that comes up, especially with Ed Kemper, is, and discussed a lot, like when Holden is talking to Debbie about the things that he talks about with Ed, the conversations he has with this killer. A lot of it starts to look at the relationship between families, and in particular, mothers and sons. You know, like we start to really see the whole, I don't know if we call this a stereotype, but haven't they sort of like statistically said that serial killers, for the most part, are white males? So you kind of see that dynamic coming into play. And one of the things that they make almost as if all of them have this, at least all the ones that they first are going to be studying in the show, a lot of it has to do with how they've interacted with their mother or how their mother has dominated their life in some way. You know, there's a lot of these aspects that it's like, I wonder how parents are feeling watching this show. You know what I mean? Like,
this
holy
is also
fuck.
another throwback to what was so big in the 70s, and the whole Freudian thing was really surging again in the 70s. That the Freudian complex thing was really surging again in the 70s, and so that was the first really solid thing that they could latch onto and try to make sense of what was going on. That was really their first sort of puzzle piece that they could say, oh, this is an edge piece and it goes in this corner, and now we can start making the whole picture. You know, but that was in that time, you know, you had a lot of hippie vibe going on and a lot of philosophy, and Freud was the name that everybody could throw around.
CJ, you look like you got something to say. I didn't want to jump in.
No,
Whoa!
Hi.
The universe is like, you guys are on to something. Congratulations.
I just wanted to talk a little bit to give a little bit more perspective to the character of Ed Kemper. A lot of, they don't really go into this in the show, but this is really something that they kind of touch on it briefly, but then they blow over it really fast. And that's the fact that at 15 years old, he started off killing by his killing career. And you kind of get in the show how he calls it his vocation and things
right.
like that. But he started off by killing his grandmother after having an argument. And in watching interviews with Ed Kemper, he did it because he wanted to just see what it felt like. And then he goes on to kill his grandfather, and he cites the reason for killing his grandfather is because he didn't want him to see his wife laying on the floor and then have a heart attack. So he just, sped up the process for him and took him out too.
Mercy kill him for the
an
thing.
act of mercy.
Yeah, wow.
So it kind of, with that to kind of being the setting, he went to a state hospital. We hear that in the show. We understand he goes to the state hospital. He comes out. And the reason why he comes out is because he is intelligent enough to be able to get the psychologists and psychiatrists to understand that he's better. He's reformed. And, another aspect that people don't know, he was a genius level. When they tested him, he had a 136 IQ. So this guy was a genius. So what they're showing on the screen, now that you know this, you can actually go back and watch how he's interacting with Holden and you can start seeing exactly why he's leading it, and you really get the feeling that, well, I'm going to give you what you want, but you're going to get it on my terms. You're going to get it the I want to tell you, and Tench is always there in his ear saying, hey, he's just feeding you full of shit, feeding you what you want to hear. But no, he isn't. He's not feeding him shit. He's feeding it to him in the order he wants to feed it, so he can start bringing forward into his mind and the way he thinks about things, and make you kind of give him that because he's got to maintain that control. Even though he's in prison, him being able to talk to Holden is giving him an opportunity to grab control of what he does. You start seeing that throughout these interviews.
I think it also puts his charisma on display as well and shows you how he is able to lure victims. Because he just has a way about him that would pull somebody in if they weren't being hyper vigilant. And most people, especially in that era, really weren't. And so this shows you how this big dumpy guy can pull these girls in and awesome.
I have a question. Go ahead, CJ.
I was going to say, and he never got caught. He actually turned.
That's what I wanted to go to next too.
So
turned himself in. My question, CJ, you might be able the best person to answer. Was the term sociopath something that they used, or is this like the turning point where they decided, like, there's psychopaths out there, but now there's these people that know what they're doing and very methodical about it, and these are the sociopaths that we actually should be really scared of?
Well, actually, Jack the Ripper was deemed a sociopath. The term had been around since before this. It just hadn't been used quite so freely.
I think Anna Torv's character though uses it, and I think we see her for the first time in this episode. She actually gets to review. Or is it the next episode? Jesus, see, they all fucking bleed together.
Do your homework, Dave.
Yeah, I just watched all of them. So that's why they're all like. I feel like it's just one 3-hour movie I just watched. I'm like, all right, guys,
keep him in check.
It's all in Infinity War. It's all that happens in Infinity War. Everything is in the same thing here. But we eventually guys hear her use the term. But they do start recording the interviews this episode, right? Or is he just taking notes at this point? Fuck.
Just taking notes. Because remember, he's like taking it. He's like, hold on.
Yeah.
And like you can see that
Ed's
like,
getting
getting
annoyed. He's like,
what
the fuck, dude? For God's sake.
I'm trying to tell a story here.
And then if he's like, make sure you get that one. It's a very important antecedent. You're like, what? God damn.
Now, do you guys notice the nuances in the character when he talks about certain things? How his mannerisms change.
Always when he first asked about his mother, and you kind of almost got the fact like, oh, he's gonna lunge across the table. Like, oh shit. You just poked the bull, dude. He
has the vacant look. He has the excited look. Yeah, you see each of those sort of aspects of him come through. You see him when he just kind of checks out.
He also has like a showman period too. Like when he first shows up, like everything feels a little on the rehearsed side of like, oh, I'm always grandiose like this when I first meet somebody. Because, we also have to keep in mind the guy who sent Holden to him set it up like going, this guy loves to talk about himself. You know what I mean? It's like, so I think he also... We noticed when he first meets Holden, one of the questions, like one of the first things Holden says is like, this isn't going to be tests, this isn't doctors, and he goes, all right, no tests, like immediately it was like, this isn't going to be some kind of like scientific, you're studying pieces of my brain, I'm not going to wake up on a gurney somewhere. So he didn't want to be studied like a lab rat, but when he finds out that somebody's interested in what he thinks, like, and why he thinks, and he even said it's a burden for people like him to carry this idea of, do you know how much work it is to butcher a human being? Do you know how much work it is, and how and at the end of the day when you're exhausted from that, you just want to tell somebody about it and you can't, and then he drops the thing that really catches our eye and I think is the actual only thing that directly responds to the open when he says, there's got to be about 35 of us active right now in the country that you don't know about. 35. And he was like, 35? You know what I mean? Like really? How is anybody still alive out there? How is anybody walking around not getting murdered if there's like 35 of you guys walking around? And so that's, I guess, what was reinforcing my mind, like, oh, so that guy we saw in the beginning, he's one of those 35, and he's probably like, this show is like, okay, he's our original story. That'll be what season 3 is about or something, when they finally catch wind of this guy, and I felt like what they were setting us up for was that season 1 would be, they're so distracted with all this other stuff that here's this one guy who's going to be killing people right under everybody's noses, and they still don't find out about it until like 20 murders down the road. Because even though we're watching this show, we know it's a period piece, it's based in history, we know that there have been famous serial killers since the 70s. Zodiac never got caught. Like there's stuff like that I wonder if they'll ever touch on. But Ed also...
We got the old cop down in California that finally just got hauled in. So
Ed... right? And Ancestry.com, of all the things. Like there are the conspiracy theorists out there who say, are you guys crazy? You're just giving samples of your DNA away to some company that now technically owns it. It's part of their property. And then hey, the one guy who thought for sure, hey, I did that murder how many decades ago? They'll never find me. I'm just going to send my DNA somewhere that might then sell or use or give cooperatively, just give my DNA since they own it because I signed a waiver that it's their property now. They just gave it to law enforcement and they fucking caught the guy. Like that shit's crazy. But again, I mean, so much as far as how our view of the world we live in might be affected by this show, and maybe that's the point too, because I think everybody at that time had to kind of get the wake up call to like, yo, this is what we need to be on the lookout for. Of course, we get the sort of that they're kind of put in their own hell to a degree because they're given the basement. The last thing we see in this episode is them going down the elevator, right, to go start their new life after Tench convinces the chief to let them keep doing this. One of the things that I think Ed does that's really scary, too, is he goes over to Holden and he shows him things. Like, you have to cut him here to kill him. Like, when he's like, do you feel how tough this is? He's like, right there, that's all cartilage. He's like, I fucked that. I cut somebody's head off and fucked that. And you're like, all right, man, let's get you some pizza.
Yeah, that was kind of crazy. It's funny because those things actually really did happen.
Right. Yeah.
We're talking about this is stuff that this guy actually did to this FBI agent. It's they never say it during the series, and I'm going to give it up now since it's not going to be a spoiler. But there is one point where he says, "I can spin your head off and set it on the table and wait for the guard to show up."
Yeah.
And they never touch on that. I wish they had, because he actually says that early on when they're talking when Ed Kemper's talking about that incident in the actual interview. It happened early on, which should have been within either this episode or the next, and it never happened.
We know. So that's something that happened in the real one. I
was disappointed.
Even David.
That was your free bird, huh?
Yeah, like Hollywood was like, this is too demented for us to put in this show. This is one step too far.
No one will believe he says that.
Yeah. I was like, God dang it, that was what I've been waiting for.
I'm trying to think. I feel like there was something Debbie did this episode that really kind of reinforced my thinking of like, oh man, I wonder if in season 2 she'll turn out to be a serial killer too. Because like her interest in the way that Kemper, like, because Holden is immediately affected,
bar?
And he's immediately affected by the fact that he's talking to Ed, and she is, responding to the things that he's talking about Ed saying. And I guess there was something just about the way that she delivers her lines sometimes, because she's always immediately the alpha. That's I guess a big thing, that Holden is not an alpha. For as much as he's an alpha sometimes, it's always in that like,
you're to her.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He does.
He's a comic book villain alpha, you know? He's only an alpha in the moment where he's absolutely sure he's going to win. Like, the confidence is high because I definitely got this, but everybody else is like, yeah, okay, now I'm going to just punch you and get you out of my way. You know what I mean? Like, he's definitely not Groot. You know what I mean? He's not doesn't have that kind of armor, and a lot of other people do, and Debbie for sure always is like, I'm the alpha here, especially in bed. For God's sake, she's basically giving him instructions. Like, all right, you do this now.
She said, move a little bit to the left. My left or your left? Your left.
Camera left, God damn it, do it.
Should we take a break? No, don't stop stopping.
Yeah.
You know, the one part in 2, I just thought about when we were talking about that because Kemper brings up, he's like, oh yeah, because you're a virgin, right? And Holden's like, very taken aback, like, no, why would you think? And he's like, oh, well, you just come across as a virgin.
Yeah.
And he's like, what about me? But then you look at him and Debbie's sex scenes, and you're like, well, yeah, he kind of does. Like, he's like, am I doing okay?
It's like he's carrying he's carrying his own. But it's almost like he's getting it right by accident. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you beginner luck, man. Go catch a fly with chopsticks. Let's see this happen now. You know what I mean?
Missionary Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was another thing that was really kind of eye-opening about this show is their sex scenes are pretty fucking Game of Thrones graphic. You're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. The only
you
thing...
can definitely tell it wasn't put on by some network.
Yeah, right.
No.
Like, I would venture to guess they're really having sex here. Like, I'm like, this is like porno without the penetration shots, guys. This is real
and
close.
it comes out of nowhere. It's like, Holden's talking to Kemper, and then all of a sudden you're just like graphic sex, and you're like, what? Why? I don't understand. That the dichotomy between those scenes, I don't get it sometimes.
You hear, you hear her breathing before we even get to the visual, and you're like, wait, that sounds like fucking. That's fucking. You know what I mean? It sounds like someone's having sex.
Go, oh, thank God, I decided not to watch this show with my kids.
Yeah, well, you know, half of us out there going like, yeah, man, yeah, that's why you go out with a girl like Debbie for sure. That's a definite benefit of this whole situation. But yeah, it's, you know, and I guess I didn't think about it in those terms, is like, when they juxtapose those scenes where it's like all these other scenes where maybe intellectually he does have the edge, but as far as his standing, you know, like they would have gotten shut down if Tench didn't go in and have a chat with the boss afterwards, you know, and he totally cashed in a lot of blue chips, if not all of the chips that he's got, because he goes, I like you, Bill. I don't like him so much, but I like you. You know, and then he's like, can you stop him talking? He's like, dude, no, I've tried. And I just want to take a moment to name drop Holt McCallany, because he's the guy from, most notably, I think, when you see this guy's face, you go, oh, Fight Club. This is his name is Robert Paulson, guy. I think I know what you mean, sir. In death, a member of Project Mayhem does have a name. His name was Robert Paulson. And then everyone's like, his name was Robert Paulson. And they like, he has that kind of bravado of always, he could be like a really tough, heavy-handed number 2. And I like that. I feel like this role for him is one of his first where he's like a focal point. Like he's one of the main leads. He's a series regular. He's one of the stars of the show. And even from when we first meet him, he brings this element that never leaves. He's a cohesive constant, I think, for the show from this point on. And definitely somebody I was really happy to see pop up in this show. I don't know if you guys have noticed him from other stuff, but I'm happy he's in it. Very gushy when I recognize an actor. I'm like, fuck you, all right, you're in this. If only all of us were making money to be excited about it. Yay. Hollow9ine.com. Help us out.
Person 47 in the Dave Rolodex of
If I could ever interview you, Holt, I'm sure we could go grab a beer and talk about what it was like to be in Fight Club and somehow release that on the Mindhunter feed, because it would make sense, because it's another show. He was also very prominent in that movie Black Hat, by the way, with Thor as a hacker. Not Mike Oman's best, but it was cool. Anyone else on this show we want to call out that was in episode 2?
No, I think you've hit the fountain of obscure to the point where we're done. I think
You know what's funny? I'm looking at the IMDb right now. Like, I can't believe Anna Torv is only in 8 episodes. And that Ed Kemper is only in 3. Like, looking at this, says Cameron's only in 3 episodes. And he is like... Yeah. Anyone who watches this show from this point on, you are not going to not picture his face as soon as somebody says Mindhunter. You know, this might as well be his show, and he's only in 3 out of the 11 episodes. That's fucking nuts. I feel like there's probably some other stuff we didn't talk about in this episode, so if you're out there in listener land going, dudes, are you fucking kidding? You're done already? Yeah, you want to shoot us an email, and it's going to be mindhunter@hollow9.com. That's the word hollow, the number 9, ine.com. You could also shoot us one at info@hollow9.com and just put Mindhunter in the subject line there. You could shoot me a note at Klone@hollow9.com, and I'll read it on the air and tell everybody, hey, we got an email about Mindhunter. But there's plenty of ways to get in touch with us over at Hollow9. How about the rest of the people at the table with us tonight? Jenny, tell us a little bit about what you got going on out in Internetica.
Oh, man. You guys can find me on Twitter at Jennifer Earp Pod, representing 10 Minutes in Purgatory. You're on the Hollow9ine Network. I also am on Twitter at Comic Crush 9, which is the comic blog that we were starting. That'll be coming up soon. Yeah, that's what I got going on right now.
Sweet. CJ Ripka, tell us, come on down. What do you got going on?
All right. You can catch us over at gritandgracetv.com. You can see and hear all the things that me and my cohort Lynn are doing there. And you can also catch me on Sundays live on the Barracks Lawyers. That's over on Spreaker.
Nice. That's a new one. I was like, my face was like, what? Never heard that one before.
Cartoon double take.
Shock me. All right, Mr. Brown, still with us through the storm to end all storms out there in the Pacific Northwest. What do you got going on, my friend?
Other than the zombie world getting bigger by the day and another zombie book, Dead Snapshot Estacada, I'm actually going to start doing some live mix between live and also some GoPro stuff that I'll just be doing video postings. I've taken up beehives this year. I'm going to be working as in the apiary type thing. This is my first year with hives, so it's going to be sort of if you're thinking about doing it and you're new and so you're a little intimidated, because I started doing the research and I was almost ready to back out because there's just so much to learn. I try to make it it's kind of video bee handling for dummies, because I consider myself kind of a bee dummy. So I got my first sting the other day, so that was kind of cool. I felt like I was being left out because it'd been almost a month and I hadn't gotten stung yet. So I finally got stung, so that was cool. But well,
at least you're not allergic, man. Good to see that you're still here.
All right.
I'm like not first thing in life, right? Just first thing in this endeavor.
First thing handling. Yeah.
Okay, because I'm gonna say in life this might have been a life or death situation if you had never been stung before.
Yeah.
I remember when I heard that fact on a story on it was way before Discovery Channel, but as a little kid I was petrified after hearing like in like those science shows they used to show you in school, they're just like, oh, by the way, these are some of the most venomous creatures on Earth. Goodbye. You're like, oh shit, that thing's flying around in here, man. There's one in here. And like I was horrified of bees. Now I'm just like, all right, well, save the world, man. Keep the plants around for us to eat.
Picking up a new 10,000 tomorrow.
Thank you for doing your part, man. You write about the zombie apocalypse, and then you actively try to stop the zombie apocalypse by having these. I love it. All right, well, you know that we will continue this investigation because there are still another 9 episodes left of this show for us to talk about. So you go ahead and watch all 9 of those and come back and join us for episode 3 when you are ready. But until then, we will be here at the Hollow9ine Network, so thank you for stopping by. And I'm going to say this is the end of this case file. See you at the next meeting. You've been listening to the Hollow9ine Network, bringing you the very best in fan-made media. That's the word hollow, the number 9, I-N-E. Now broadcasting from our new home on the web, Hollow9ine.com. where you can find info on all of our awesome programming as well as the team behind the shows. Leave us your feedback, join in the conversation, and be a part of the action. Find the Hollow9ine Network on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat.
Rate and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. Email us at info@hollow9.com or at hollow9podcast@gmail.com. Join in the fun. Hollow9.